Good morning and welcome to the Red and Ed Show, where it's always morning, even in the afternoon. My name is Jay Edgar, and I'm joined for the first time, second time actually, technically, but for the first time as a combined show, my lovely co-host Elaine. Elaine, welcome to the new show. How are we doing today?
Good. Welcome to the new show.
Thank you as well. We've got a bunch of stuff to get to today here. I mean, this is going to be quite the packed show for the first show because we had quite the week for the week. So let's get the intro music out of here and let's go ahead and look down what we've got going on here today. So, to start off with, we have the Trump speech in Mount Rushmore, and we'll talk a bit about what was there, including some of the highlights with that. Ghislaine Maxwell wound up getting arrested this week. We'll talk a bit about who she was and what this means for the country. Protests continue to go on with Black Lives Matter and everything else going around the country, so we'll talk a bit about the protests in the gated community, as well as Minnesota's governor requesting emergency funding for Minnesota. We'll talk a bit about that. 2020 is still going strong, and even with the new show, we're going to have to talk about that. So I've got a bunch of stories going on with 2020 and what this could mean coming in here, including an unsuspecting guest making his way into the candidacy. So we'll talk a bit about that. The coronavirus is continuing to go, and we'll talk a bit about the numbers versus the deaths and what's happening there, and a new drug that's coming over there. And we will have a couple of regular segments that we hope to do: a government overreach of the week, the warmongering of the week, and I've got a surprise anti-libertarian sentiment for you here that since you didn't watch the morning stream this morning, you have no idea that's coming. It's going to be all of this and more over on the Red and Ed Show. Thanks everybody for coming by. We are streaming live right now to DLive, YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, and Facebook. And if you're over on Facebook, go ahead and get on to one of those other channels so you can participate in the live chat and we can see what you're saying over here. If you can't catch us live, you can catch us on demand over on YouTube and over on BitChute.com, or you can catch us on the audio platforms, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. And I promise I will catch up with that. So we will catch you up on the audio platforms as well. Remember, if you're over on iTunes, leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That always helps us move up the charts. Lastly, make sure you go and check us out over on the Freedom Scoop Media Group, along with great creators like The Generational Gap, like The R-Rated Conservative, like The Freckles and Brit Show, or Wyatt Birkenhoff, or Stephen Ignoramus. We're all over there. You can go catch all of our replays over there, and you can check out a bunch of our swag over there. So we're getting ready to get started here, but before we get into anything else, in addition to you starting a new podcast, you've got some other news that's brand new out there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's new in your world?
So I have accepted a position full-time with the Joe Jorgensen for President campaign. I am the Deputy Communications Director for the campaign.
And I know that you can't get into everything there because of proprietary information, but tell us just a little bit about what that entails for you.
I manage all the social media accounts for Joe Jorgensen, and I do a lot of other things as well. Today I wrote a press release and did some other stuff. So that is sort of my day-to-day. I do sit in a lot of meetings. We discussed that off air. But it's really fun. It's kind of a dream job. And I think it's really, I mentioned this on my Twitter yesterday, I think it's really cool that on the 100th year anniversary of women getting the right to vote, I get to work for a presidential candidate that's also a woman. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm not one to really do identity politics, but I thought that was an interesting coincidence.
That is an interesting coincidence. Actually, I like that too. And I know that you've been quite busy there, so um, I know we were looking over everything with the notes and everything. I know you have the government overreach of the week, but for the most part, I've been kind of linking everything else. But I know that you also said that this will be helpful for the podcast because you do a news brief every day. Is that correct?
I do. Yeah, we do a news brief every day so we can stay on top of everything. So I'm always looking at trending news all the time and then responding as necessary.
Well, for those of you, because most of my audience here is going to know me very well, before I do get started, I want you to just introduce yourself a little bit here for those of our audience that weren't there the first time you were on the old show.
The old show.
Yeah.
I like how you say it. So my name is Elaine. You guys know me as Libertarian Redhead. I am on Twitter and Facebook. You can find me on Twitter at LibertarianRed1. And on Facebook, my page is just called Libertarian Redhead. I have been a libertarian since 2009. I joined the Libertarian Party in 2017, and I've held multiple leadership positions in the party. And I have also worked on a handful of campaigns and now working on a presidential campaign. So I have other interests as well. Ed and I have a couple of interests in common. We're both gardeners, although we grow vastly different things. Ed grows carnivorous plants and I grow vegetables. So
Hey, I have food this year for the first time.
you're clearly the one with designs on world domination over there with your carnivorous plants.
I was excited when I did my last garden update because I actually do. I have beans for the first time. I have beans. I have created food. That excites me because I didn't think it was going to happen.
Food is good. I actually ate some tomatoes from my garden today at lunchtime. They were delicious. So gardening is good. Everyone should garden somehow. Learning to grow food is a life skill.
Learning to grow meat is a life skill too, but I haven't. I don't have the land for that yet.
Learning to grow meat. Chickens take up very little space. Just saying.
Cows take up more space.
Yes, they do. Also, you can't eat a whole cow by yourself. That's like physically impossible.
I want to touch on a little bit of celebrity news here, something that's of personal interest to me and something that's of pretty vast interest to the rest of the world today. First off, we do have to take some time and pay our respects to one of the violin greats of the world, or fiddle greats, as we say of him and his genre of music, and that is the fact that Charlie Daniels has passed away today. The devil went down to Georgia and he could not find a soul, so...
It's so sad.
Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know, I lived in Nashville for 5 years. So country music is obviously a really big deal. And actually, I have driven by Charlie Daniels' farm down there many times. It's a beautiful place. So
Yeah, I can just about imagine that it would be with him. I mean, if you got that kind of money to put that kind of investment into something.
you can't even see anything from the road. It's literally just like really beautiful, vast farmland. But I would imagine that it's beautiful house and lots of animals and things like that. But he was a really great person and a really great member of the country music community, and everyone loved him. So he was kind of like country music's grandpa.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad to lose somebody great like that. Somebody who even lent his voice to King of the Hill. I mean, that's a very large list of people as well, but you usually wouldn't see somebody in country music like that. But
No,
sure
not
enough.
usually.
And then I want to talk just a little bit about the fact that I know that it's unpopular among my audience here, but Jordan Peterson has actually come out of hiding at this point. I have not taken the time to sit down and listen to his daughter's podcast because that is not on my regular rotation. I'm not a huge fan of Michaela Peterson herself, but I do want to actually sit down and take the time and listen to the conversation she had with her dad, talking about the fact that he came out of substance abuse very recently, that he's recovering and that his family's recovering at this point because, I mean, one of the things that kind of changed the way that I look at the world and especially the biblical sense of things is Jordan Peterson's biblical lecture, which I just listened to again just about in its entirety. He's on his regular podcast. He's getting to the end of that. So that's been something that's been really important to me, and I'm glad that he's out. I'm glad that he's safe, and I'm glad he's doing better. But I do want to hear both sides of this as well. I know some people aren't as glad with him just because of some of the reactions that he's had, but he's been an inspiration to me at least. I even cleaned my room because I read his book. Do you have anything to say on Peterson at all? Or?
I really don't know anything about him, honestly. I just don't pay attention to him. Lots of people in the Libertarian Party and movement love him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I'm one of them because I just don't know enough.
I know he's like his lectures are a lot more male centric, so I could actually see that. I mean, it is trying to
they
teach men how to be men. So I like the lectures. I really do. I've been really big into psych my entire life, so just to have the chance to listen to a lecture on that on the go on a podcast, I like that. I really do.
Whatever works.
All right, we are going to welcome in our audience here today. So, you want to read the live chat for us here?
Yes. Last I checked, they were talking about the first documented people to fry chicken were in Scotland. Didn't know that. It's also apparently National Fried Chicken Day, so that's cool. And Ron says that must be why my chickens are hiding. It's very possible. And our friend Ninja says homegrown tomatoes are so much more satisfying. I totally agree. The only thing you have to worry about is not watering them too often to basically water down their flavor. And don't harvest them in the morning. Harvest them in the afternoon when they're tastier.
So I wonder what the changes in that.
Lots of food chat so far.
All right. So you want to get into topics here?
Let's go.
All right. The first thing that we have to touch on today is Mount Rushmore, because that is the latest in the types of statues that people want to tear down. And I'm going to read here quick from NBC News. Nick Tilson, Trump's Mount Rushmore fireworks show is a 4th of July attack on indigenous people. So part of the argument that they have against Mount Rushmore is the fact that it was stolen from the Lakota tribe, who stole it from the Cheyenne, if you really want to go back into anything. But, I mean, how dare you bring logic and facts into everything here. But let's see what they have to say. On Friday, President Trump continued his tour of racism and colonialism, moving from Tulsa, Oklahoma, to the sacred Black Hills. Make no mistake, the divisive visit was an attack on indigenous people. I visit the Black Hills alongside many other Lakotas every year as part of a tradition we have maintained for thousands of years. Stretching from what is known as South Dakota to Wyoming, they are a sacred place. I take my family and children to, like the Vatican for Catholics or Mecca for Muslims. The hills are where I feel most connected to the creators. The Black Hills are also the site of death, violence, and war. They are the home to Mount Rushmore, a monument to white colonizers carved by a Ku Klux Klan sympathizer into land stolen by us from the U.S. government in 1877. Two of the men carved onto that mountain are slaveholders, and one approved the mass hangings of 38 Dakota men in the largest mass execution in the history of the United States. So we've been following the statue story for a little while here, and this is probably one of the harshest criticisms I've seen of Mount Rushmore so far. But what have you seen on this so far?
I mean, it seems like it's always been a point of contention because it's so big and obtrusive and obvious. And I understand the indigenous people's argument, because it is their reservation. And the American government has not done a good job in its history abiding by any of the treaties that we have signed with any of the native peoples that lived here before we did. So I definitely can understand how they would see it as just kind of one more nail in the coffin for them. But the reality of paying for sandblasting Mount Rushmore, I don't even know how much that would cost or how long it would take. And it does seem just excessive. So I don't have a super emotional attachment to it, but that's not my fight, I feel like.
I mean, I'd like to go and see it before they blow the thing apart. And, I mean, once again, one of the big things on this is the same thing that goes along with everything else. First off, it's the George Washington was a slave owner argument, and then they also bring in the Klansman ties to the sculptor, which I didn't know until people started screeching about it.
Yeah, I've known it was a problem for a long time, but again, it's I can't imagine the cost of taking it down. That would just further destroy the land, I feel like. And if they just want to preserve the land, then at this point, I don't know that blowing it up would really do anything.
It satisfy a lot of people who are into tearing statues down. What is your stance on the statue argument itself? Because I've heard a lot of different ones here. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this particularly or not.
Leave the horses, take the men down. The horses didn't ask to be there. That's basically it. No Confederate horses asked to be on the battlefield.
I don't even know what to say to that at this point here.
I'm not wrong. I did have an interesting Twitter discussion with someone about it maybe a week ago or so. She did have some really good points of just basically moving the statues into museums. My stance was sort of, don't go through the cost of doing that. You know, you have to build out an exhibit that goes with it and all that kind of stuff. I think that if you change the plaques to be more historically accurate for the time, rather than just having that history be written by the winners only, then that would go a long way for people, as well as generally taking the approach in public schools of history not being written by the winners, because my history books in school were severely lacking in any other opposing points of view or even different points of view or anything. I mean, I think, I don't know if it's on our list. I didn't see you mention it, but Juneteenth, I didn't know about Juneteenth until like 4 years ago. I had no idea that was a thing. It was never mentioned in a history book or anything. So clearly the curriculums that we have now are skipping over lots of important things.
Hell, I didn't know about it.
You can't fit everything in. I understand that, but I do know that it was only kind of taught in Texas, Oklahoma. It's kind of a regional thing. So,
well, I mean,
I don't see any.
It's a state holiday in Texas, but yeah, I mean, I didn't know about it until the Donald decided to hold a rally on that day.
Yeah. I think a lot of people didn't.
And now it's on every legislator's bench to go up and say, oh, yes, well, make this a national holiday. Put the legislation forth. Make sure that Evil Orange Man can never hold a rally on that day again. And yeah, I mean, that you're right. It's a Texas thing. It's not necessarily something that we see all around the country. I mean, I could see a national holiday being more like the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation that set all this down and started this going into motion.
Yeah, but I could see setting that kind of a holiday on June 19th. Like, that would be fine with me.
So I don't know where we're going with this, but I also know that we had a speech that went along with this as well, that went along and talked about all sorts of fun stuff. I actually have the speech here, and there are some highlights that go out of this. But, of course, the first thing that we've seen, and the first thing that the news tried to go up and talk about, is the fact that this was the most divisive speech of the president's career. Now, I listened to the speech, and first off, I will point this out. Teleprompter Trump and Twitter Trump and even Rally Trump are three very different people.
I can imagine. I can't stand the sound of his voice, so I typically don't listen to any of his speeches unless I can help it. I'll read them. Most of the time they don't make sense, but especially if it's a direct transcripts. The direct transcripts are the best because you can see just how often that man cannot complete a thought, where he just like trails off and starts making things up and then finally moves on to a new thought. And you're like, but there was never really a period in that sentence. It just kind of went on. And then there was an ellipsis and then you had a new thought.
Well, that's part of the thing that we have going here, where we have ancient people running for president nonstop.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, Joe Biden is the oldest person, I think, at this point to have ever run for the presidency, isn't he?
I don't know. I'd have to look that up. I think Bernie was older.
That's right. He is a little bit older.
Yeah, it was like I mean, he's going to be 80 before he finishes his first term if he wins, which I think is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't
But
understand how he
I've
gets.
seen a lot of people not confident that he's going to win, and I don't think they're wrong.
I've seen a lot of people that are not confident that he's going to make it to election day.
So here's my theory.
What's up?
I'll give you this. My theory about Joe Biden is that he's not going to make it through the first debate. He's going to completely crumble because he's been out of the public spotlight for several months now because of coronavirus. And it seems like he's deteriorating.
Hmm.
But because no one has really seen him in action, you don't really know for sure. So he's going to have to get up there on the debate stage, face Trump. He's not going to have anybody standing next to him. If you've noticed, his wife stands next to him a lot and like kind of almost holds him up on one side. It's very strange. No one's going to be next to him. No one's going to be coaching him except for maybe between commercial breaks. But commercial breaks are like 3 minutes. So how much coaching can you do in 3 minutes? I think he's going to crumble. I really do. I think being under the hot lights, having to stand up for an hour, having to debate for an hour, I just don't see it going well. And I think people are really going to realize how frail he is after that first debate, if we're able to even have one. I think canceling the debates works in his favor.
I actually heard a completely different conspiracy theory last because he has agreed to the debate at this point. But I've heard a completely different conspiracy theory at this point because COVID is such a thing and wearing masks is such a huge thing without this. I actually heard Matt and Blonde over on Beauty and the Beta. Matt was talking about the fact that there's a possibility that he could be wearing a mask because of coronavirus during the debate, and then he's just mouthing words which are nonsensical, and they've got a voice actor coming in and doing
Oh,
the debate
wow.
for him.
That's extreme. I don't know that they would be able to get away with that. I think there's too many people there. Like, how could you hide that? You can't.
Well, there's a possibility that they could go with a no audience because of the coronavirus, like they did with the Biden Bernie debate.
I guess. I don't know. He still had an audience of sorts at his last rally. I don't know if you could call it that. It didn't really seem like one. It was a bunch
Yeah,
of folding chairs with circles.
yeah, but the last debate was just the moderators and Sanders and Biden in a room together.
Yeah. So Ron looked it up. Peter Cooper was the candidate of the Greenback Party in 1876, and he was 85 years old.
Wow,
Yeah.
he was just about there for the beginning.
He was born in 1791. It's
Thanks,
insane.
Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
So I want to go back to this speech here because I looked at a couple highlights off of this, and once again, I didn't see the divisiveness out of this speech. I really didn't. I saw actually probably one of the more uniting speeches, and I don't think that Stephen Miller wrote this speech because I know
Probably
Stephen
not.
Miller, and that this doesn't sound like his writing out of this. But I know that a lot of it was military exceptionalism, especially the South Dakota Army and Air National Guard, thanking them, thanking a lot of the various heroes for abolition, a lot of the various heroes for bringing slavery to an end, and a lot of the heroes that came out to bring civil rights forward. I did not see the
Mhm.
divisiveness out of this. I don't know where anybody else is getting from this, and I've listened to it and I've read it twice, and I don't see this was a massive message of unity, which we desperately need right now. We really do.
I don't think it got really all that much coverage. I think people were just too obsessed with the coronavirus aspect of it, being upset that he was having a rally during coronavirus and how dare he, and are people going to wear masks, and are they going to socially distance? And I think they were obsessed with those details more than what he actually said.
You know what they didn't obsess over this time through? The crowd size,
Yeah.
which I'm guessing means, and I haven't looked up what the attendance numbers were for this, but I'm guessing does mean the fact that this wound up being a packed. Well, it wasn't really a house; it was outdoor, but I mean they packed them in probably shoulder to shoulder at this thing.
I don't want to stand that close to anybody right now. Like I'm not necessarily living in fear or anything like that, but I no, I just wouldn't.
No, but I'm sure, like I said, there was probably thousands of people that came and showed up to this, and they're packed in as close as they can get them while social distancing or being appropriate to one another out of this.
Right.
But yeah, you know that if there'd only been like 1,000 people or something, that would have been the first headline across all the news. Nobody wants to go and see Trump anymore. So,
But did you also notice that Trump's team didn't publicize how many tickets were sold or how many registrations they had? Like they didn't, it was almost like they didn't want to fuel the fire because they knew that people would try to do the same thing that they did in Tulsa again
oh,
and
absolutely.
reserve tons and tons of tickets, because that was actually pretty ingenious.
So the other side of this, of course, is the fact that the president came the next day and gave another speech in Washington, D.C. And on this speech, he announced the fact that he is going to create a national garden for statues for various heroes of the United States, including people like Martin Luther King and Harriet Tubman. Did you see anything on this one at all? I don't have
I
an
saw
article pulled up for
nothing.
this. Oh, it was an interesting idea. Tim Pool covered it. Let me see if I can pull an article up on this quick. Garden of Heroes. There we go. I didn't pull this one on the stack, but I did want to bring out of this. Let me see what I can find for news on this one here. Maybe I can find the one that I read this morning, because I did read this on. Yeah, The Hill was the one that I read from this morning. Now, the White House unveiled an executive order Friday evening to create a National Garden of American Heroes. This will feature statues of prominent Americans.
So today, under the
Oh, we got a video
vested
playing.
in me,
Let's stop
Why?
that.
What I don't understand is why an executive order? I don't get that. What is that? What is that obsession? It's like as soon as something wants to get done, let's bypass the democratic process of just signing an executive order. Like I don't understand that.
Well, I
It's
mean,
so
he learned very well
frustrating.
from his three predecessors.
Well, yeah, I mean, lots of them have done that, but it's just like that shouldn't even really be a controversial thing.
Hmm.
I don't know. I guess it probably would be in some way. They would. Everybody's going to find a problem with something.
Yeah, absolutely. The list of statues on this, and this was the reason I wanted to bring the article up, would include John Adams, Susan B. Anthony, Clara Barton, Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, Frederick Douglass, Amelia Earhart, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Martin Luther King Jr., Abraham Lincoln, Ronald Reagan. I'm
Yeah,
50-50 on the fence as to whether or not that one wants to be on there. Jackie Robinson and Harriet Tubman, among others.
it's a pretty good list.
Yeah. And once again, I'm not seeing the divisiveness out of this as well, and that's once again that's what they're trying to say, because he wants. I think this is a counter, especially against the people that want to knock the statues down.
Probably. Yeah, it's like, well, if you want to knock them down, we're going to put 10 more up.
It's the Hydra statues.
Right? You take one statue down, Trump builds three more. Ouch.
But of course, because I've been kind of a fiscal hawk on all this, I do have to wonder what this is going to cost, and can we get any private donations for this? Because I do think that, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of these statues that they're taking down right now were private gifts to the United States. They weren't necessarily funded or um, requested by anybody, if I'm not mistaken. Is that, would you consider that accurate? Or
I think so. I was just looking up how much an average statue costs.
Mhm.
And it looks like it can cost as much as $75,000. And that's just for the statue. That's not for the installation or the maintenance or anything like that. So
or they're
it's
taking it
not going
down
to
when somebody
be,
determines it racist?
yeah. So it's not going to be cheap. It's probably not going to be the most expensive thing that the government's ever done either. So somewhere in the middle.
No, we'll talk about that a little bit later on, the most expensive thing that the government likes to do.
I have some guesses.
So that's what I have on the garden of statues there. I mean, to an extent, I think it's a good idea. Fiscally, I don't know.
Sparta says, I demand a statue of Bruce Lee, and it should be huge.
It should be huge, absolutely.
I don't disagree. I actually visited his gravesite when I was in Seattle a few years ago. It was very neat.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, he and his son Brandon are buried together.
Looks like they're demanding one of Nikola Tesla, too. That would actually not be a bad one to have. So, this is what I have so far on the speech and everything else that happened over the weekend here. And do you have anything else to add on this, or?
Nope, I don't. I'm just going to tease them a little bit. What about Alexander Hamilton?
I have not seen that musical yet to this day.
I haven't either.
It's on Disney Plus right now, and my sister has small children, so I get the Disney Plus for free.
That's good. Yeah, I think if you have a Verizon account that
Well, you
that
have to
you
have
get a
unlimited
year.
data, so I do have to
Oh,
figure
okay.
out. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be the nice brother because I just changed over to unlimited data, and I'm going to see if the Disney Plus gods will let me apply my free year of Disney Plus to my sister's account.
So since we mentioned Alexander Hamilton, I feel like I should share a little known story about the founders, specifically Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, if you guys want to hear it, because I think it's pretty funny.
Go ahead.
Okay. So do you know who was the inventor of the swivel chair?
I don't, actually.
Thomas Jefferson.
Huh.
Do you know why he invented it?
No.
Because every time Alexander Hamilton was speaking, he would swivel it around and face the wall.
You heard it here
hated
first,
each-
people.
They hated each other that much.
I think Aaron Burr hated him just a little bit more.
Maybe only slightly.
Well, if that's all we have on the speech here, before we pop in and talk about Ghislaine Maxwell, you want to take a quick chat break?
I actually have been. We're all up to date, basically. Hamilton should be erased from history. Central governments and bankers, no thank you. Yes, Ron, you are correct. Hamilton did suck. So we're up to Hamilton in the chat. That's where we're at. Everyone hates Hamilton.
All
That
right.
should be the title of sequel, musical number 2. Why does everyone hate Alexander Hamilton?
Yeah, it does seem like there is quite a bit that's going on there. That he has caused some divisiveness over the past 3 years, especially, but all the way going back to the beginning. And yeah, he was shot. So
Yeah. I don't think anybody had any hard feelings about it.
So I'm gonna let you lead this one here. Walk me through the beginning steps of this Ghislaine Maxwell story, where we started off on this, and we'll talk about where this leads from off of this here.
So apparently, I read an article a few weeks ago about her hiding out in Paris, just down the street from where Jeffrey Epstein had a penthouse in Paris. And the feds raided it, and they confiscated computers and lots of different things. And she was afraid, I think, that she would be next. But she wasn't in the States at that point. I don't know at what point she came back to the States. I'm sure that they had some kind of monitoring in place to see if she had come back, and the authorities would have been alerted if she had purchased a plane ticket and landed in JFK or LaGuardia or wherever. So they arrested her at a mansion in New Hampshire, which is like a super random place. But they've arrested her, they've taken her in, and all of the news stories that I have seen over the last few days have talked about how cooperative she plans on being with them, which is code for she doesn't want to die, basically. That's how I took it. Then there were kind of reports that turned out to be false, that she was diagnosed with COVID. And I just saw a news story on that yesterday that no, she was not diagnosed with COVID. So I don't know what they're setting up for here, but we might get Epstein part 2.
So one of the things that I was following along with when I was following along the story was the fact that the first thing is she is being transferred to possibly the same prison that Epstein was held in, that has faulty cameras and first day guards who fall asleep on the job.
Is it Hillary Clinton wearing a fake mustache?
I saw that meme. Did you see that?
Yes, it was so good.
Hiluichi Clintonia.
Harvey says her case of COVID will be, quote unquote, one of the most severe cases they've seen, and she will have been the picture of perfect health beforehand. I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
We'll see if they try to make that catch on.
So, just to read from this for a little bit on the record here, I do have the arrest article here. Jeffrey Epstein confidant Ghislaine Maxwell arrested on sex abuse charges. This is from NBC4 New York. Ghislaine Maxwell, the British socialite and heiress, which I didn't realize she was a socialite at this point until just shortly after all this broke, who became the confidant of disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein and was later implicated in his alleged sexual crimes, has been arrested by the FBI. She was arrested in Bradford, New Hampshire around 8:30 a.m. Thursday on charges she conspired with Epstein to sexually abuse minors. She was found living at a reclusive $1 million luxury home with 156 acres of rural mountainside property, federal prosecutors said. In a brief electronic appearance, New Hampshire federal court Thursday afternoon, a judge remanded her to custody of the U.S. Marshals and ordered her transferred to New York City. She did not enter a plea, and her attorney indicated he will seek a detention hearing from New York, a prelude to a possible bail request, which, I mean, at that point, she's got the money. She is going to be able to, if all this comes down and comes out, she is going to be able to definitely swing for bail.
If they even allow her to have bail. I mean, she is a British citizen, not an American citizen. So I don't know how that plays into it. I don't know if Britain is going to want her back or not. Mm-hmm. But yeah, she can post bail. But usually people with a lot of money are considered a flight risk, and so they don't remand them with bail.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and that's, I think, where the big thing is going to come out of this is the fact that she is going to be absolutely 100% a flight risk.
Right. Or they'll just make her go back to that mansion and put an ankle bracelet on her.
Yeah, I don't know that that's going to do any good either, especially when you've got Hiluigi Clintonia running around.
I was just thinking that but here's the other thing. If they keep her in prison and something happens to her, then again, it's back on the prison. But if they let her go home and they put an ankle bracelet on her, someone could sneak in the middle of the night and do something. And then they'd be like, we had no idea.
Yeah.
That's not on us. That's not our fault. So they may use that as plausible deniability.
Well, one of the things that was interesting about this is the fact that, first off, everybody knows that she knows everything that went off of this. But according to sources that I've looked through looking into this and other podcasts that I've listened to out of this, Jeffrey Epstein himself actually had a non-prosecution agreement, which I don't know how you get that unless you
by having a lot of money and a lot of information on very powerful people. Yeah. That's how you get that.
But the non-prosecution agreement said that none of Epstein's associates could be prosecuted. That Epstein wanted, if anything ever came down from anything, to only ever happen to him and everybody else to skate free. So I don't know, once again, how this plays into it, especially given the fact that Epstein himself is dead and can no longer honor the agreement.
Right. They didn't get the information out of him that they wanted except for the black book. Mm-hmm. So technically, I think that means that agreement is voided because he never held up his end of it.
Okay. So this is going to be interesting. I think there are going to be a lot of powerful people that are implicated into this, which, once again, going back to the whole didn't kill himself thing, I'd be watching this woman pretty closely at this point, if not even just for protective custody.
She is definitely a candidate for witness protection program, I think.
She's probably also a candidate for Arkansas.
Probably. Ron mentioned that in the group chat.
And that's, that's one of the things, too. And as soon as she was arrested, I saw it was trending on Twitter, Clinton body count.
Yeah, and Maxwell didn't kill herself. Yeah, that was already trending, too, like within an hour.
Well, and then I had to run out and speculate the fact that I didn't know how long it was going to be before Twitter nuked the Clinton body count hashtag and replaced it with hashtag Trump body count with 7 individual tweets on it. 7 tweets is a trend.
Wait, did that happen?
No, it didn't happen. Or at least not that I saw, but I was waiting for it.
I was like, that would be weird, but okay.
They've done it before.
Question. Have they really?
Yeah.
I guess I don't pay that much attention.
I read the Twitter trending every Tuesday, but yeah, they've done it a couple times before where somebody's blaming Clinton for something and then they switch it up and blame Trump for it.
wild.
It's just business and politics as usual. So, what does this mean going forward then for people that were associated with Epstein?
That they're not out of the woods yet, that there's still someone that could implicate them. I think Prince Andrew, he's still very much at risk. She was close friends with him. There are tons of photos of her at the palace visiting him, and there were photos the other day from a Kevin Spacey visit to Buckingham Palace where the two of them are sitting on the thrones. Thrones, by the way, that the Queen of England has not sat on since like 1956.
Oh, wow.
They're like specifically for her and Prince Philip, and they don't even sit in them. So that photo kind of caused a stir. But Maxwell's sitting in one chair and Kevin Spacey's in another chair, and he's recently, within the last few years, been accused of sexual assault. So I don't know. It's not going to go well.
Well, I know Epstein's deal was usually girls, but I thought Spacey was into boys. So I don't know how that works or anything, or if they had a special island just for him, or how any of that worked.
I have no idea. I don't even want to think about it. That's really gross.
Well, there's something else that you probably don't want to think about here. Let me get the scene queued up over here. And that is the other conspiracy theory that came up out of all of this. Because I don't have studio mode up here. Let's get that one up here. This birth certificate started trending around Twitter just shortly after all of this went down here, showing on December 21st, 1992, in Manhattan, a child was born named James Maxwell Trump. 12/29/1992, mother's maiden name, Ghislaine Maxwell, and father's name, Donald J. Trump.
That seems a little outrageous.
Now, of course, sleuths on 4chan, among other sites, quickly deduced the fact that that was a false flag, and this actual birth certificate was the one that they based it off of. Birth certificate belonging to, I can't read that, Tara Ann Uzamari. Sorry, the screen is really small on this particular program. Tara Ann Uzamari out of Brooklyn, but it's got all the same numbers, including the document number on the bottom. So this was very, very quickly debunked, including, for the second time today, reading a Snopes article that was actually favorable to the president. Is James Maxwell Trump's the son of Ghislaine Maxwell and Donald Trump? A birth certificate for James Maxwell Trump shows that he is the biological son of Ghislaine Maxwell and Donald Trump. This is rated false by Snopes. On July 2nd, 2020, British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested and charged with conspiring with convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein to sexually abuse minors. Shortly afterward, a person claiming to be James Maxwell Trump started a Twitter account and shared an image supposedly showing a birth certificate proving that he was the biological son of Maxwell and U.S. President Donald Trump. This is not a real birth certificate for James Maxwell Trump, the supposed son of Trump and Maxwell. The above displayed image is an altered version of a birth certificate for an unrelated person named Tara Ann Uzamir. So, yeah, unbelievably, for the second time today, I've read a Snopes article that was favorable to our current sitting president. So, did you see anything on this one at all, or?
No,
it was a short-lived trend.
Yeah, I think because it was disproved so fast. Also, our followers are upset that rich people have islands for their criminal activity, and Sparta said, I don't even have a treehouse for my criminal activity.
Sparta, I'll build you a treehouse.
I want a bat cave. Just give me the bat cave. It's all fine. If the car comes with it, that would be even better.
Which version of the car?
The new one? The Christopher Nolan version?
Oh, I was thinking the Adam West version when he had the 56 Lincoln.
No, it doesn't have enough weapons on it.
I like Lincolns though, so I'm a Ford man.
Those are old man cars.
Those are old man cars with a lot of power though, so I'll take the trade-off for that. But that's what I have onto this, and of course now we're going to sit and watch this. I do have to wonder, and I speculated about this morning, if this is going to be the next thing, because I mean, to be completely honest, the news is trying to stick that bit of fear heroin in all of our arms with the coronavirus, and the BLM stuff is really starting to fade off. Nope, it's still going on, but nobody seems to give a fuck about it anymore.
I saw a video today on Facebook of a woman wearing like a I Heart USA shirt in New York with a big can of black paint trying to paint over the street that said Black Lives Matter. And I was like, really? That's excessive.
Well, it looks like they're going to repair the apartment upstairs while I'm on air.
Uh-oh.
Thank you.
There are elephants in the attic.
Hey, at least I don't have to listen to the upstairs neighbors doing it anymore. Their bed was off balance. Ask me how I know.
I don't want to know.
It's probably pretty obvious at this point. Probably a lot of the same sounds that were coming off of Lolita Island.
Let's move on to the next news story.
You want to take a quick chat break?
Sure. Sully wants the tank from Dark Knight. I'm with you, man. Like I said, superior firepower. Ron Helton says Amy Cooper is charged with filing a false report on the Black Bird Watcher, whose last name was also Cooper.
Yeah, that was just breaking today. Otherwise, I'd probably had that on the stack too. There are a couple that were just breaking today that I didn't manage to get up onto what we were talking about.
There was so much breaking news today. It was a heavy news day.
It was ridiculous. I'm gonna have a fun morning tomorrow. I can tell you that.
Yep, that's all we got so far.
All right. So I want to move on here, and I want to talk just a bit about the BLM protests that are still going on and some of the aftermath that's falling out about this. The first thing I actually want to talk about is these two right here. Come on. There we go. The McCloskey pair. St. Louis homeowners who decided that they wanted to come and defend their property because when Black Lives Matter came in to hassle the mayor's neighborhood in the gated community that Google Earth can't even go into, by the way, they did this in order to get into. Yeah, no, if you look over that neighborhood, that particular area of St. Louis, it's blacked out because Google Maps can't get into there.
I wonder if that's a security thing.
It is. It's that private of a neighborhood that they didn't want to come in there. But as you can see, the gate here is busted down, that's a wrought iron gate. That took some doing.
That supposedly happened after they entered, like when they were leaving.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, in the video that I saw, you can see them walking through the gate. So they've opened the gate and they've walked through it. So when they came back out or something, then yes, then that's what happened.
Well, reading from KMOV4, I'm not sure where that's out of here, Central West End couple explains why they pointed guns at protester who demanded Crusen's resignation. I'm guessing this is a local St. Louis affiliate. A husband and wife made national news when photos capturing them and pointing guns at protesters Sunday night outside their Central West End home. During the protest, images and videos showed Mark McCloskey, 63, holding a rifle, and his wife Patricia McCloskey, 61, pointing a handgun at the crowd of about 300 protesters around 7:30 p.m. The protesters were marching to St. Louis Mayor Lyda Crusen's home to demand her resignation. The McCloskeys said they were in fear for our lives, and that's why they pulled the guns out. It was like storming the Bastille. The gate came down, and a large crowd of angry, aggressive people poured through, Mark McCloskey said. I was terrified that we'd be murdered within seconds. Our house would be burned down. Our pets would be killed. Now, I didn't get much of a chance to talk about this because this was still breaking news last week when I was talking with Steven, so we didn't know a lot of the details out of this, but what we did know at the time, of course, is the fact that the McCloskeys have absolutely terrible trigger discipline.
Yeah, they do. It's really bad.
And every gun owner over on Twitter decided that they wanted to remind these people that they had terrible trigger discipline, and they just kind of looked generally like they didn't know what they were doing with any of this.
Yeah, it didn't go well.
So what have you seen on this?
The internet was not supportive. Let's just say that. Even people who were pro-gun owners were not supportive.
So, other than the trigger discipline out of this, what have you seen on this story so far?
So I have seen talk from people that I know that are attorneys or lawyers that are saying that the way that Missouri's, I don't think they're stand your ground laws, but the way that Missouri's self-defense laws work, that they did actually commit a felony, but that was under debate because it was kind of a debate of whether or not the street in front of the house was actually private property. I know it was gated off, so to me that seems like obviously it's private property, but there are some people that are arguing it wasn't private property, it was still a street. Um, and the protesters entered, but the McCloskeys, I guess, were supposedly inside their house or on their porch or something like that.
Hmm.
And I don't think that any of the protesters really got up into the yard really close to the house or anything like that.
Well, I know Mr. McCloskey. What was his first name here? Let me get up there.
Ken.
Mark. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Ken
Ken.
and Karen.
Yeah, I know that. Mark had actually come out and he was on Chris Cuomo's show saying that the protesters were out and clacking together magazines saying that they were going to be killed. So they're definite different sides to this story, and I don't.
Hmm.
I mean, there's no camera other than the still photo that was pointed at the two of them, and the video that you saw that I didn't, obviously. Uh, but I mean, there's no definitive proof of what happened here, so we are seeing a lot of he said, she said out of this.
Yeah, and the wife, she sits on the bar association in Missouri.
Hmm.
So she is a lawyer, I would
They're
assume. So
both
she knows
lawyers.
the laws of the state. I would think that neither one of them would just break the law, but weirder things have happened.
Well, the most interesting thing about this all is the fact that it was brought out and pointed out very quickly that Mark McCloskey is an attorney himself as well, and he
Hmm.
has actually been working with a lot of cases for civil rights people, or civil rights cases rather, for black people, including Black Lives Matter activists, and he has been doing a lot of pro bono work for some of these people.
That's good. I think he had a really bad reaction to people on his property.
Well, there's that, but I also look at the side of this as well as, I mean, I look at the libertarian side of this. Say you are your own first line of defense, and these people, as terrible as their trigger discipline was, were being their first line of defense. They saw a situation that could have easily flown out of hand in a hell of a hurry, and they jumped to action to try and make sure that their own property and he and his wife were defended. So I'm
I
on the
don't think
fence
there
about
was
this.
I don't think there was intent though. I mean, they were not going to the McCloskey's house. They were going to the mayor's house. So in my mind, it's kind of like, okay, they were on the road in front of the house or the sidewalk or whatever it is, the private street,
Hmm.
and they were going past the property. But I don't think they were going up into the yard or up towards the porch or up to the front door or anything like that. If they had been advancing towards the house, I could have totally seen that being a legitimate reaction. But because they were just going past it, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I guess that's all I could say.
Oh, that's going to be interesting. You heard that too, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
So, yeah, I don't know what happens with these people, what comes next out of them. I know that Cuomo was trying to come out here and trying to, I mean, Cuomo was just trying to rip this guy apart. I saw some of
Hmm.
the video on this last night, and I didn't get it up into the show notes to have onto the video, but I, if you haven't checked out the Cuomo interview, I definitely recommend you go out and check that out, because it was just a bit ridiculous.
What is he throwing a fit about today?
The intent angle that you were talking about before.
Oh, okay.
And I know that once again, it was just breaking today that there was even more going on with the McCloskeys. In fact, that protesters were coming again to protest their house. Let me see if I can go and grab this article quick, because I know that was right on the front. Yep. From Time Magazine, protesters returned to St. Louis area where a couple drew guns in widely spread pictures. That's actually from a couple days ago at this point. Several hundred protesters made a peaceful return trip Friday to the St. Louis mansion owned by a white couple whose armed defense of their home during an earlier demonstration earned them both scorn and support. Protesters marched along the busy public boulevard called Kings Highway, which intersects with Portland Place, a private street that is the site of the Renaissance Palazzo-style home of Mark McCloskey, 61, and his 63-year-old wife, Patricia. That is reversed from the last article that I looked at on this. Chanting protesters on Friday stopped at the gate just outside the McCloskey's home for about 15 minutes, the gate that closes the private street to non-residents, and an extra metal barrier blocked the entrance to Portland Place, where the protesters had walked earlier in the week on the way to the mayor's home nearby. So, I mean, they're not going to let off on these people.
We'll see. I mean, clearly they're both lawyers, so they've probably got great defense attorneys in court.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I don't know. I don't know if this story is over. I don't know if this is going to be the thing that injects BLM back into the front lines. It does seem like it's still fading off on this, even though there are other things that are going on with this here. I want to take a second and move off of this, though, and look at some of the aftermath from some of these protests, including coming out of the belly of the beast, out of Minnesota itself. I'm going to read from News 8000 out of La Crosse, Wisconsin here. Governor Walz requests disaster declaration from President Trump, and he is the second person to do so because the mayor of Minneapolis also requested a disaster declaration to try and get federal funding to help rebuild the city after everything happened there. Governor Tim Walz asked President Trump for a disaster declaration throughout Minnesota Thursday after the riots surrounding the death of George Floyd caused more than $500 million in damages. The governor's office says nearly 1,500 businesses throughout Minneapolis and St. Paul were damaged by vandalism, fire, or looting. These corridors provide lifeline services like food, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, housing, and transportation to thousands of Minnesotans, Walz said. Fires that caused damage to public infrastructure totals about $15.6 million, according to the governor's office. Walz is requesting aid from the Federal Emergency Management Agency to help cover the cost of those damages. And I think, maybe unpopular, maybe not. First off, I'm looking into taking a real estate license class because I think that there's going to be a lot of flight from Minnesota, and I'm just right next door, but I think this is bullshit.
Which part? Or all of it?
All of it, because first off, going to FEMA for help is probably the most atrocious thing out of there. First, FEMA can't hold itself up at this point, but this was not a natural emergency. This was a human-decided emergency, and then, of course, Walz wouldn't pull the trigger to get anybody out there to defend the home and property of any of these people. So he's kind of made his own bet on this, as far as I can see.
Yeah, I think so, too.
And I think it's egregious, the fact that right now he wants to go out and get money at the taxpayer's expense.
Yeah, federally, for sure.
So I don't know where I want to go on this here, but it's just I don't want any of this to happen. Especially given I don't really think that the federal government should be stepping in and helping any of these cities. Not Seattle with the Chaz and the Chop, not Atlanta with the Wendy site, which we'll talk about here in just a minute, or anything else that goes along with this. I think they've all made their beds. They've refused to come out and try and defend their citizens, their sites, the property of their citizens, or those things that the government should be doing, even if it is overbloated at this point. I mean, that's the legitimate role of government, is to protect the life, liberty, and pursuit of property of the citizens, and they failed to do so.
Pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
Which often involves private property.
Yeah. So, what do you think on this? I know I kind of drove the conversation on this one, but
That's okay. I think it's unfortunate for all of the people that did lose their businesses and their homes and things like that. There are some things that insurance will not cover, and there has to be some other, redress in the system that we have right now to, help these people get back on their feet, because it would be unfair for the city for just to be like, sorry about you, it's cool, we can't do anything. So there are probably a large group of people who are demanding that their city do something, and the city obviously can't stay in ruin. The economy has to continue somehow. People have to go back to work. And ultimately, the rioting hurt the people that they claimed they were trying to help.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't good. So, they have to do something for those people that have been legitimately harmed or maimed, by having their businesses taken from them. Just because somebody puts a GoFundMe up doesn't mean that they're going to be able to put their whole life back together.
Right.
They might raise a bunch of money, but it's like, what do I do? My business is literally non-existent. So I think that there were ways to mitigate the damage early on that now don't exist. I think that time has come and passed. But I think somebody else is having the same thought that I am. Def Mike says Seattle is going to reap the rewards of a large class action lawsuit from the small business owners. I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing happened in Minneapolis.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, if you get the class action out there, you get the money in these people's pockets and pull it out of Minneapolis, there's going to be a big flight from Minnesota, at least from the city itself, but definitely from Minnesota as well, because Walz mismanaged this just as bad as the mayor. I cannot think of the mayor of Minneapolis' name right now, but...
Fry?
Is it Mayor Fry?
I think so.
Yeah.
Starts with an F.
So, yeah, look at the flight that's going to come out of this, and they're going to either come
Jacob
here.
Frey.
Yeah, that is Jacob Fry.
His name.
So I don't...
Makes him sound like a Game of Thrones character.
I like that. So,
Walder Frey.
And I know the last time that you and I talked on this show, we also talked about the retired firefighter, not the quite retired, but the close to retirement firefighter who had saved up for his entire career to build his fantasy sports bar. And then first they busted the window out and vandalized it, and then once he got it cleaned up and started to rebuild it, they burnt the damn thing to the ground.
Yep, they burned everything. So that's months and months of lost income, lost wages, not to mention the loss of your initial investment, everything. And depending on how your insurance policy is worded, it may or may not be covered. Now, in his case, I know that he did start a GoFundMe and raised a lot of money so he can rebuild. But again, that takes time. You can't get lost wages back. If you were planning on opening in June of 2020, and you don't get to open until June of 2021 because you had to wait for your building to be rebuilt and all that kind of stuff, then you've lost a year of wages in that time.
And not only that,
you've also not been able to hire people from the local area to work for you. And that's unfortunate, because a place like that that's locally owned can really do a lot for the neighborhood and the locality where it's at.
And I got this feeling that this particular gentleman is going to be building that new sports bar in La Crosse the second time. Because I think he's going to be on a Minnesota flight too.
That's good.
Or maybe Eau Claire. I don't know, somewhere up there. Somewhere on this side of the river he's going to do it. So that's what I have on this so far. And like I said, I think... And this is going to be the same story in a lot of these left-run cities. I know that they're trying to build a CHOP in New York, and the NYPD isn't having it.
Of course the NYPD isn't having it.
But we do have governors that are actually getting up and stepping up at this point here and trying to come up and do the right thing. So I want to read from NPR now on the other end of the country, on the southern end of the country here. Enough is enough. Atlanta mayor calls for violence to end after child is killed. Enough is enough. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms said after an 8-year-old girl was killed and more than 20 other people were reported injured over a violent 4th of July holiday weekend, the Atlanta Police Department is offering a reward for up to $10,000 for information that leads to the arrest or indictment of those responsible for the child's killing. Secoria Turner was shot near the Wendy's restaurant where Richard Brooks was killed last month after a confrontation with police. At an emotional Sunday evening press conference, Bottoms acknowledged the simmering tensions between Atlantans who have protested for weeks against police brutality. She said the recent spate of shootings in the city is a result of members of the community shooting at each other, which is the same thing that we saw in Seattle. Just once they were all gathered into one little area and the police weren't allowed, and they were all armed to the teeth, they started shooting at each other instead. And now, first off, I know that there's a reward out there for whoever's responsible for the shooting, but can we take a step back, really, and talk about the parents that brought their children to an active fucking war zone?
Yeah, that was not smart. I mean, I'm all for kids going to peaceful protests. We had some here in Indianapolis, and for the most part, they were fairly uneventful. There was some minor occurrences of violence and things like that, but also in a lot of cases, the police were escalating things where they didn't need to be, where there were perfectly peaceful protests going on, and then all of a sudden tear gas. So it's kind of one of those things, like, if you're not sure, you should probably leave your kids at home.
Yeah, most likely. And then, I mean, our mutual friend Britt actually put out there on Twitter something that they've been trying to use, the leftists have been trying to use against the rest of the country forever. Say her name, say her name. Well, Britt tweeted out this morning, say her name, Secoria Taylor. Or is it Taylor? I'm sorry. Probably got that wrong.
That's Breonna Taylor.
Yeah, no, that was what was on the brain. Secoria Turner, not Taylor. There it is.
Turner. Yeah, okay. That was close.
Yeah, say her name, Secoria Turner. And, of course, that doesn't fit the narrative, so we're not going to come out and run that. Where does this all end?
I honestly don't know. And I think that's what scares me the most, is that I don't know that there is an end. I don't know that people who just want to cause chaos and violence will ever be satisfied. It may not ever be enough for them. Now, there are legitimate reforms that need to be made.
Oh, absolutely.
But these things do not advance the conversation in any way.
I mean, all this stuff is happening and we still have a federal government.
This is very true.
I got one more protester story here, then we'll go check back with the live chat again here. Actually, I've got a little bit of video to go with this before I read out of the Associated Press, so let me get that queued up here. Let's see how that works with me not doing anything out of here. Let's get this up here, opened up, and whoops. Well, I just doxed myself, so it was going to happen eventually.
I still hear thumping.
Yeah, they're doing flooring upstairs. All right. So let's see what this looks like. So what we're seeing here is a video of a car coming up onto the interstate where the Seattle Police Department had cordoned off as a protest site. A car came up through the police barricades and hit two protesters. One has been killed and the other one remains to be in critical condition. And they're doing flooring upstairs, and I can hear it very, very well here. So, have you seen anything on this story so far?
I have seen a few things.
Okay.
Is that the one? It's the two women, right, that got hit?
Mm-hmm. From the Associated Press, a person killed Saturday when a man who drove his car onto a closed Seattle freeway and into a crowd protesting police brutality was remembered Sunday as someone who is dedicated to the cause. The other person hit in the incident, meanwhile, remained in serious condition Sunday at a Seattle hospital. The deceased, Summer Taylor, 24, who spent the last 6 weeks tirelessly standing up for others while working full-time and supporting everyone around them, wrote Urban Animal on Instagram, the veterinary clinic where Taylor worked in Portland, Oregon. Taylor, who the Post said used they and them pronouns, was a positive force of nature and brought joy, the Post said. Anyone that works for Urban Animal will tell you that Summer Taylor's laugh made anyone's day better. So, of course, they are going to they're going to focus on the positives of all of this. But I do. It's lower down in the article here. The driver of the car that hit them was DeWitt Collette, is in custody awaiting a court hearing on Monday, at which the judge will determine if he can be released on bail according to court documents. Collette of Seattle drove the car around vehicles that were blocking I-5 and sped into the crowd at 1:40 a.m., according to a police report released by Washington State Patrol. Video taken at the scene by protesters showed people shouting "car, car" before fleeing the roadway. So,
the moral of the story is protesting on highways at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning is probably not a good idea.
well, and there's so much else that went along. And yes, there was police protection. They had it blocked off. But, of course, you've got people out there dressed all in black protesting on the highway at 1 a.m. on the highway where cars go.
And he never should have driven through the barricades. I mean, he was definitely deliberately trying to cause harm.
Which is very weird to me as well, because it also appears, and I have not found a confirmation of this, but he was actually going the wrong way on the highway too, which means that he entered the highway on an exit ramp to go and get into this.
Interesting. I wonder if he was under the influence of something.
Or, and this is the other thing as well, from what I understand, and once again seeking confirmation on this as well, is the fact that this particular gentleman owned a 7-Eleven, and he was driving a Jaguar sedan when this happened, which, given the fact, knowing people, he was, I believe, a Somali immigrant. He owned a 7-Eleven in Seattle, and he was driving a Jaguar up on the... I do have to wonder, to an extent, if this was staged or not.
I don't know. I don't really buy into conspiracy theories like that.
And I'm looking at some of the facts around this, and yes, like I said, this fact that this was a Jaguar of all kinds of cars for somebody like this to be driving up on the highway under the influence, if that's a possibility.
I don't know.
What have you seen on this story?
I've seen a lot of people trying to play identity politics, and the driver's black and the girls that died or that got injured were white, and people are just trying to stir that sentiment, and I think it's wrong for sure, because when you just drive into a crowd, it's not like you're picking targets. You want to hurt somebody, but I don't think you really care at that point who it is. So for them to make it about that is kind of ridiculous.
So now, like I said, the other person is in critical condition, and we do pray for her recovery, and we do pray for the families of Summer Taylor for their loss on this. I hope that they can find peace in all of this, but once again, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, and you, like you said earlier, you should not be protesting on a highway no matter how much police protection you have, because not only do cars go there, but large trucks that take a long time to stop drive on that same highway.
They did mitigate the risk by having police protection, and that was a good idea, but there's always that chance. There's always that chance that you're going to have somebody who wants to drive through the barricades and hurt someone. We saw it in Charlottesville. We saw it we've seen it in all these protests. There's always someone who wants to cause harm to others.
I was understanding the guy in Charlottesville.
At that point, it doesn't matter if you're armed at that point either, because it's like you could take personal responsibility for yourself, but even being in a crowd of that size is a very big risk.
And I do understand the sentiment. Of course, they're protesting on the highway because they want to inconvenience people, so they understand what the cause is. And okay, I can have a little bit of respect for that. But the other side of the coin on that, of course, is the fact that you have a much, much, much lower chance of getting hit by a car in a park than you do on an interstate.
Right.
All right. I'm going to queue up a couple new articles here for the next topic here. You want to catch us up on the live chat?
I'd like to catch up on your apartment renovations.
Well, as the search...
It's not my renovations either. It's the one upstairs for me.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
Ron says the state should not sanction stupidity. Wait, the state is stupid. Never mind. True dat, friend. And let's see what else. If it was staged, it would have been a white dude from Sully. Maybe. Sully also points out that Jags are affordable after about 4 years old. This is true. And Ron says, why would they sanction protests on an interstate? City streets, okay. Blocking interstate commerce, not okay. Agreed.
Yeah, I can
There are probably
understand that.
better locations to have a protest at 1 o'clock in the morning. Someplace where there aren't any cars.
Yeah, like I say, it's just been it's one thing with me. It's yeah, don't do it on the road. I can't understand why people do that either. And I've looked like when they do it in Milwaukee, they do it on I-43 going north out of Milwaukee, going towards Green Bay.
Oh,
And
okay.
sometimes they come the other direction there. And there is a fairly large trucking company that is known for having a couple of accidents on the record. Let's just go off of that. That drives along that road all the time there. You couldn't get me angry enough to go and protest on that stretch of road. Well, you
Yeah.
couldn't really get me angry enough to go protest on any stretch of road, but especially not that one. Do we have anything else in there?
No, not really.
All right, then we are going to move along here and talk a bit about what's going to happen in 2020. So,
What do you mean what's going to happen? I feel
uh,
like, I mean, how much worse could it be?
ugh, don't challenge them like that because they will take that challenge. Uh, the first thing I want to talk about is this Russian bounty thing, which I've been trying to catch up on, and I have no idea what is actually happening out of this. Now, I've gotten analysis piece from Brian Stelter up here on CNN Business because that's going to be the most objective thing in the world. But I just want to read here for a second out of what's here, but see if you know anything about what's going on with this. Brian Stelter says nearly a week has passed since the New York Times published a story titled Russia Secretly Offered Afghan Militants Bounties to Kill U.S. Troops, intelligence says. The fallout has been coming ever since. Congressional leaders were briefed by intelligence leaders on Thursday. Afterward, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer said our armed forces would be better served if President Trump spent more time reading his daily briefing and less time planning military parades and defending relics of the Confederacy. I can't argue with that one. I can't argue with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and that scares the shit out of me. In the past week, this scandal has inspired the famous Kayleigh McEnany line, "The president does read," sparked criticism from all manner of intelligence professionals and about the president's ignorance, and renewed questions about why he seems so soft on Russia. Trump and McEnany and their media allies have denounced the leaks to the Times, which have been matched by numerous other outlets, including CNN. So let's take a closer look at the leaks. What can we discern? Here's a possibility. The internal government system for whistleblowers is so broken that concerned officials went to the Times to blow the whistle instead. Times national security correspondent and CNN contributor David Sanger says that's a valid theory. So, from what I've understood from this entire story, which I don't understand what's going on out of this, is that Russia somehow offered a bounty for American troops and nobody knew about it, given especially given the fact that Russia and Afghanistan have not always been very friendly with each other, given their religious differences. Of course, Russia insisting that their religion be the state, and Afghanistan being a very military, or I'm sorry, Muslim area. So, what have you seen on this so far?
I saw a very entertaining story from Politico in which the White House accused the media of spinning this story and saying that it was like yelling squirrel. So basically, the White House is like, no, the media is just telling you, look, something shiny. And that's their argument. So I don't believe that he wasn't briefed. I believe he didn't read it. If anything. If anything is true, that's probably the most true scenario.
I don't believe it even happened. Because I can't see any scenario globally where that's even a possibility at this point.
I don't know. All I'm saying is that to me is the most likely. I think if it was real, then the story is that he just didn't read his briefings, which has happened in the last few years anyway. There've been lots of reports of, well, he didn't read his intelligence briefings. We told him about this 2 months ago.
And okay, I get that, and I know that you know, he's got the attention span of a goldfish. I understand that. I think most people in the world understand this at this point.
Right.
But still, I mean, if that was actually happening, I'm pretty sure that would have been something that the person that reads the briefing bullet points to him, because it's been confirmed that there's somebody that does that. I'm pretty sure that would have been pretty close to the top of the list
One would think.
if it was actually happening.
Yes, but you've seen how often the man sits and tweets.
Yes,
I don't have confidence that he can pay attention to more than one thing at once.
that is true.
So I could see someone sitting in the room with him, briefing him, and he's like, yeah, okay, whatever. It probably happens a lot.
It does. I'm very certain of that there. So I don't like. I think this story is bullshit. I think this is just another Hail Mary that they're throwing up here to try and derail the president's administration and try and win them points for 2020. Which there's so much other stuff that you can actually go after. He promised he campaigned on ending the Patriot Act, and then he fucking signed it. Go after him for that.
Yeah. His excuse would be, well, I was briefed in private and decided that the Patriot Act was necessary. And that's been my beef with him since like day one, because he is definitely the type of person that is like, you're not allowed to do that, but I should be allowed to do that. And he's like that about a lot of things. That man never met a contract he couldn't buy his way out of. But does he think you could buy your way out of contract with him? No, absolutely not. He doesn't think that that's possible.
No, you're absolutely right. I was actually looking forward to seeing, just because of the trolling aspect of it and the fact that this was a non-politician, so I didn't know what was coming out of it. That was the reason that I voted for Trump the first time. After the Patriot Act, I can't do it. That was the day that he lost my vote. And even then, coming up to it, it was starting to get to the point of hold the nose and pull the lever.
Yeah,
But
I think a lot of people are getting there.
yeah, the Patriot Act just did it in for me.
Yep. FISA. FISA's another big one too. That could have stopped, but nope. What kills me about FISA is that it was used against him, and he still signed it.
Yeah, I could see that being a problem. So I don't know where this whole thing with Russia bounties go. I do think I don't see a universe, given the two players involved, where this plays out and works in anybody's favor on that side of the world.
No, it doesn't work out in anybody's favor. But the question really is if this were true, who do the Afghans hate more, Russia or the United States?
Well, I know that they're currently trying to work a deal with us. We're going to be talking about that in the warmongering segment a little bit later, but no, you're absolutely right. It does come down to this. And one of the other things that I look at this, when I look at whether or not this could be true and what this could do for this, is the fact that it wasn't just U.S. troops on this. It was a lot of British troops were involved with this too.
It was coalition.
Yeah, anybody on the NATO coalition, which means that if this was true and he didn't get briefed about it or didn't do anything about it, that would put the responsibility on him for a lot of our allies' troops as well.
Yeah, even though I don't think the death toll has been as high in the last 3 years as it was during the Obama administration and the Bush administration, because that, of course, was when we were still in a very hot conflict.
But without going off into another rant, that's all that I have on that there, unless you have anything else to add.
No, I don't.
Right. Let's talk about vice presidential picks, because Kamala Harris has come out and her camp is saying that she is definitely going to be the likely presumptive vice presidential nominee. In fact, I didn't have a chance to vet it, but I actually saw a story just as I was getting ready to go live that her camp, or people are up in arms right now because a lot of the information was scrubbed off her Wikipedia just today, which I haven't had a chance to vet it yet, so I'm not going to talk too much on that here. But
I'm going to go look at the wiki.
While you're doing that, reading from Fox News, Senator Kamala Harris will likely be presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden's vice presidential pick, New York Post columnist Miranda Devine said on Tuesday. I think the interesting thing about Kamala Harris, though, is the fact that she's coming out to showcase her ways just as she's becoming the favorite as the vice presidential pick for Joe Biden, Devine told Fox and Friends, pointing to an event Harris has scheduled with the DJs to support Biden's candidacy. As you see with this DJ promotion she's trying to inject some cool into the campaign. And she is, after all, a good friend of President Barack Obama, and he'll be the sort of silent force behind the throne of Joe Biden. And I said one word on this when I read this on Contemporary last week, and I'm going to say the same word right now. Busing.
I have one word. I have one word about Kamala Harris.
Can we say it on air without getting thrown off the air?
Oh, yes. The answer is no. The word is no. Kamala Harris, no.
Yeah.
Bad.
Absolutely. So
I just scrolled through her Wikipedia and there's paragraph upon paragraph of information. So if anything was scrubbed, it's either not noticeable and they're upset over nothing, or the page was restored.
Which could be. And I do wish I had access to an archived version of this on short notice, but I definitely will be looking into the archives for this as we go along here, as we get off the air and as I look into this further out of this. But how does Kamala Harris square the circle of being the second executive right now in today's anti-cop sentiment?
I don't know. They want that black vote so bad. And we're going to talk about this in a minute. But Kanye just royally screwed that up for them.
Yeah. Ron Helton pointed out the VP of cop in today's anti-cop sentiment. No, that's not going to work.
Yeah, it would have worked before George Floyd. There was a chance that people would have held their nose and done it anyway. But now,
I don't know if it would have worked before
so.
George Floyd either, because a lot of people were suspicious of her as a cop even before then.
But they were still willing to accept it. But what we're getting into now is, and this is what I've said all along, is I kind of feel like whoever the VP is will end up being president during Biden's term, because I can't see him serving full 4-year term.
Yeah, I ran a poll on Twitter, a 2-day poll last week, asking people what the more dangerous spot for Kamala Harris would be in their opinions for personal liberty, whether she be on the vice presidential pick or the Supreme Court. Now, surprisingly, according to the poll numbers, most people were more afraid of her being on the Supreme Court, but from the comments, it seemed that people were more uneasy about the vice presidency because of the fact that Joe Biden is going to be 80 years old, and his brain is already Swiss cheese.
Right. So I feel like whoever the vice presidential candidate is, if they were to win, they would be the person really running the show. They would trot him out for things like the State of the Union and whatever. But the State Department, the Secretary of State, would handle even more of the foreign relations than they already handle. And then the VP would handle a lot of the day-to-day executive activities that he wouldn't be able to handle because it's just too exhausting.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know why anybody would consider her for the Supreme Court anyway, because of laughing about the fact that she smoked weed, listening to Snoop Dogg when Snoop Dogg was 12 years old, and then continue to put
generally
people
being a horrible person,
and then continuing to put people in prison for minor drug offenses, and then extending their sentences so that she'd have cheap labor for California.
You know, I kind of hope she gets nominated for the Supreme Court, because the confirmation hearings alone would be worth it. She would never make it, but the confirmation hearings alone would be worth it.
And they all know her too. That'd be who confirms the Supreme Court?
The Senate, I thought.
Yeah, they all know her.
Yeah, they all know her.
Personally.
I was like, wait, is this a trick question? I was like, did I not? Did I do something wrong?
I see you have a note in here on this next story, so I wasn't sure where you were going with that here, but I'll ask you out of this. But I want to read here from Axios just real quick. Amy McGrath wins Kentucky Democratic Senate primary. Retired Marine fighter pilot Amy McGrath defeated State Rep. Charles Booker in the race for Kentucky's Democratic State Senate nomination, AP announced Tuesday. Why it matters, McGrath was deemed establishment favorite until Booker's progressive candidacy surged forward following the Black Lives Matter protests. Booker Rep. up a number of high-profile endorsements, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Senator Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and former HUD Secretary Julian Castro. Kentucky continues to deal with the fallout from March police killing of Breonna Taylor in Louisville, and Booker has actively engaged with demonstrations calling for justice. So McGrath is confirmed going to be the one standing up against McConnell, which I don't think he's going anywhere. Just looking at the various demographics of Kentucky in and of itself.
He's basically royalty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going anywhere, but you have a note in the show notes here about Brad Barron, so why don't you tell me a bit about that instead?
So, so like my first day with the Jorgensen campaign, we were doing a couple of fundraising pushes. One was for a U.S. Senate candidate in Kentucky named Brad Barron.
Okay.
The Republicans in the state of Kentucky set the debate threshold at $100,000 of donations just to get on the debate stage in Kentucky. Brad Barron is the Libertarian candidate for U.S. Senate. He raised $100,000. So he will be on the stage with Amy McGrath and Mitch McConnell. And I don't know that has ever happened in Kentucky, ever.
No, that's actually incredible. I didn't know that was coming up here. So, what does he have for a platform, and what do you think are the chances at this point? Especially,
I haven't looked at his platform super closely, but it seems like it pretty much goes down the Libertarian Party platform fairly closely. Obviously, because he's representing Kentucky, there's some kind of specialized things in there that really apply to just Kentucky that may not translate for other people in other states, but that makes sense. So. I didn't see anything that showed a red flag or anything like that. So I am really happy that is going to happen because I think it needs to happen.
So I got to ask you this here, especially since you work on the campaign and you've pointed this out here. What does that do to the political landscape in this country if a third party does unseat the Senate Majority Leader, who's pretty much a rock star as far as news goes?
It would cause chaos. Like the good kind of chaos, not the bad kind of chaos. It would cause the good kind of chaos. I think people would I think at first they'd be mad. And then over the course of his term, I think they would discover that they really have things in common with him, whether they're from the right or from the left. I think that they would look at him and the Democrats in the state would be like, oh, he supports criminal justice reform and the things that I support along those lines. But they would probably still hate him for, his stance on healthcare or something like that. But then the Republicans on the right, now keep in mind, of course, that in Kentucky, they've had Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, who are very libertarian. Well, Rand Paul, not as much anymore, but Thomas Massie, very libertarian leaning congressional rep. And I think people in his district would really like Brad because he's probably not that much different than Thomas.
Right.
So that might actually play very well in Kentucky.
Okay. Well, we will be watching this one closely here because you as a libertarian and me as a federalist, we both have a very big interest in unseating the two major parties at this point. So we'll be watching this race closely as we go on. So I'll make a note in the show notes for this because this is going to be the same document we use forever. So I'll keep a note in that one so we keep talking about this one and keep paying attention to this one.
Yeah, I can't remember any other libertarian U.S. Senate candidate except for Gary Johnson, which I worked that campaign in 2018 when he ran for U.S. Senate. I can't think of any other U.S. Senate candidate that's raised that much money, at least in the last probably 20 years. So this is a big deal.
I think Gary Johnson's misinformation on what Aleppo is might have shot him in the foot permanently at this point.
He's retired. He doesn't care. Trust me. I've talked to him.
Did you see my talk with Kokesh?
I don't think I did.
Oh.
No.
That was the first, I think Nephilim Ninja in the chat that was the first thing he said is, hey, what's Aleppo? And Kokesh had a bunch of funny answers prepared for that. I was actually kind of impressed how he did on his feet, but he had a bunch of crazy ones, and then he did explain the situation on that and what it meant for a Libertarian Party going forward.
That's great.
But I know one of them that he said was something about the llamas. I'd have to go back and listen to that again. A play on alpaca.
Okay. I don't get it. But I trust you.
Well, he was pretending not to know what Aleppo was.
Oh, okay.
And he had some crazy answers to go up into there, so that was funny. Uh,
When we did text banking, I would get, "What's Aleppo?" all the time. I started asking them about other random cities in the Middle East.
yeah, I bet you that didn't go far. I'm going to rearrange a couple things on the schedule here, too, because we're talking about McConnell and McGrath here. I do want to touch on McConnell one last time here. And this is
I'm gonna
from,
check in. I'm gonna check in with the group chat real quick while you rearrange things.
I'm
If
already
that's
ready, but if
cool.
you want to
You're
take a
already
quick chat
ready?
break.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's do a chat break. We haven't done one in a minute. Well, they just stopped talking about Afghanistan. Um, Sparta says Gary Johnson climbed Everest. That's not talked about in the mainstream media. Did you know that he also did it with a broken leg? Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
I didn't know that.
Yes, he had a fracture in his leg, and he still finished the climb, and then somehow got back down. Then more chatter about Afghanistan. So yeah, I think we're caught up. You guys are boring tonight.
Oh, they'll get there. They'll get spicy. I know these guys pretty well at this point, especially from the other show,
I
from
just
the morning
challenged
show.
them, so they're probably gonna hit me back.
Oh, so let's talk a bit about McConnell and his predictions for if he does wind up out of office here. So, to read from the Hill, McConnell warns Democrats not to change filibuster rule. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell warned Democrats on Tuesday not to mess with the filibuster rule if they win control of the chamber in November, and this is actually important. So, he said eliminating the legislative filibuster by reducing the 60 vote threshold for passing bills to a simple majority would be a serious mistake. The important thing for our Democrat friends to remember is that you may not be in total control in the future anytime you start fiddling around with the rules of the Senate. I think you always need to put yourself in the other fellow's shoes. Just imagine what might happen when the wind shifts, McConnell told reporters. When asked about an uptick in discussions among Democrats about changing the filibuster rule if former Vice President Joe Biden wins the White House and they capture the Senate. Now, I do understand a little bit of where this is going because I know that they've been talking about court packing and they've changed the filibuster rule for Supreme Court justice nominees after Harry Reid changed the rules on regular judicial nominees, both now only requiring a simple majority. But now they're looking at as well changing this for all regular laws. What is your take on the filibuster?
I think it's a necessary function of government.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there always has to be some kind of stopgap in place.
Well, yeah, especially with something as sharply divided as the Senate. Now, for passing anything right now through the Senate, they do need to get people from the other side on board, no matter which side is running right now, because they've been running right along that 50-50 mark for a few years at this point. So they can't just steamroll over everything with a filibuster vote, with a party line filibuster vote. So
Yeah, there's a lot of problems in Congress and the Senate, and they're systemic with the way that day-to-day business in the building functions. So it's not enough to just say that you have to get rid of a filibuster or it needs to be changed or something like that. There are other things going on all the time that prevent actual progress being made. And there are things that don't happen on the floor. There are things
Right.
that don't happen in debate. And, there's all kinds of stuff. If you haven't watched the series with Thomas Massey that he did about draining the swamp and about how difficult that actually is, you should go watch it. He also, they explain a lot of this stuff in the background, like how people get chosen for committee positions, how they have to pay their party for positions on committees and things like that. That kind of stuff to me is a lot more important to change than how many people you need to filibuster a vote.
Well, and one of the things too, whoops, video playing there. I'm sorry. One of the things too that goes along with the filibuster itself and everything else that goes along with the government is the government was designed to move slowly.
Definitely.
It was designed in part to try and make sure that there was going to be gridlock and that you would actually have to court people from another political party. I mean, even though Washington hated the concept of political parties, the founders knew from the beginning that we were going to divide up into parties like that, and it was going to be a white and black kind of thing. That was probably the bad pun to use during the Black Lives Matter protests, but I'm going to stick with it anyway. I mean, the founders knew what was coming out of this. And I'm pretty sure that they designed the government in a way so that you actually had to court people from the other side, so it wasn't just going to be a direct party line vote to just trample everything. So we wouldn't have simple majority running everything. And changing the filibuster back into simple majority, that does threaten that.
Yeah, it does. Sorry, I have company.
I was going to say, you need a second? That's my take on it. And I think McConnell is absolutely right on that. And I do think that if the DNC takes power in the Senate again, they are going to do everything they can to try and push it back into a simple majority, because they think they're going to hold the House and then they can just railroad through anything that they want, especially if Biden comes into the presidency.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Sorry if you heard any of that. I don't know what's going on.
Just something hitting the ground. That's all that I heard. So, I don't know what's going on with this, to be completely honest. I think it would be a problem. I think McConnell's right. Do you have any last take on this?
I think so, but I don't think it's the most pressing issue of the day, and I don't think it really. I don't know. I just don't think that things are really going to change all that much.
All right. I want to get your take on this Supreme Court decision that happened last week. Not the one that happened today, which we'll talk about next week, of course, but the one that happened last week where Justice Roberts changed his mind. So from CNN, John Roberts sides with liberals on Supreme Court to block controversial Louisiana abortion law. Chief Justice John Roberts sided with the liberal justices on the Supreme Court on Monday to block a controversial Louisiana abortion law that critics said would have closed nearly every clinic in the state. The 5-4 ruling is a win for supporters of abortion rights who argued that the law was not medically necessary and amounted to a failed attempt to restrict abortion. The law barred doctors from performing procedures unless they had admitting privileges at a nearby hospital. Now, from what I understand, on most of your walk-in clinics, like when I was a kid, we went to just a little clinic inside of the big city next to where we lived. Instead of going to the hospital for everything, there was just kind of a walk-in clinic. But that walk-in clinic did have to have admitting privileges to the closer by hospital, the hospital I was actually born at, because that was the law in the state of Minnesota in order to do. And from what I understand, that's actually pretty standard for like a knee surgery or anything that's going to be outpatient out of this. So I don't necessarily understand why that would be different from abortion, other than the fact that, yes, this is going to be something that causes some inconvenience for the people who seek it. But what really caught my attention on this one was the fact that Roberts, who initially dissented against the Texas decision that this was the precedent for this was based on, now came into line with the Democrats because, and I quote, Texas being decided like this means that we have to decide every other state like this going forward. What's your take on this whole thing?
I mean, I think denying people medical care always puts you in a tricky situation, because not all abortions are just abortion for the sake of birth control. Mm-hmm. There are situations where a woman might have to have what's called a DNC early in a pregnancy that is basically the same procedure as having an abortion. And we all know how black markets work. If you forbid people from having a procedure done, it doesn't matter what that procedure is. It could be a boob job. If you forbid people from having it done and they decide that they want it anyway, they will find a way to get it. And it will be more dangerous and it will be more risky than if you had just allowed them to do it legally. So this is just another form of, it's just going to create a black market. That's all it's going to do. Mm-hmm. It's going to make the procedure much more dangerous. More people, more women will be harmed by unauthorized procedures, illegal procedures, etc. And I'm a libertarian. Ultimately, I don't think that the government should be deciding that for you. I think that's between you and your doctor.
Yeah.
I don't wish that any woman would ever be in that situation where she felt like she had to make that choice, but it's not my life. And everybody has reasons for doing things. Everybody has kind of that limit, that situation that they don't ever imagine themselves in, and then suddenly it happens, and then they have to make a decision, and you really don't have a whole lot of time in that kind of situation to make a decision. You just have, a few weeks, sometimes less than that, to make a decision like this. And for them to cut it off so early is a problem as well, because typically you don't even know until you're at least 6 weeks.
Well, there's that, and I respect it. I am actually pro-life on principle, but I don't want the government involved in it because the government sucks at everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
But on the other end of that, I do respect the idea that Texas had that got struck down and that Louisiana had that, just in case something goes wrong. I like the idea of having the admitting privileges. So if something gets botched in there, then yes, you have the opportunity to go out and get your life saved. Yes, rather than just bleeding out on the abortion table. I like the idea behind it, but
then you have states where having it, I mean, again, with the black market, if you have one and it's not legal, then if you do get into trouble, you'll be prosecuted as a criminal.
Yeah, like I said, that's exactly where I go with. I don't want the government involved in it because they suck at everything, because you're going to wind up losing life on that way.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just kind of the way that you commented, I feel like you're a little bit the same way. Like on principle, you're pro-life, but the government sucks at enforcing things, so why get them involved in it? That sounds like what you said. I don't know if I was completely off base on that, but
no, that's correct. I mean, they can't manage anything effectively. I definitely don't want them managing anyone's healthcare, mine included. So that's not my decision. I can't force someone else to live the way that I think that they should.
That's kind of the reason that we do things the way that we do as well over on the libertarian side. Because we don't want to force people to do anything that they don't want to do.
Right. And as soon as you tell someone that, I don't know if you hang out with libertarians at all, you know that the second you tell them not to do something, that means they're 10 times more likely to do it.
You mean kind of like when you challenged the chat just a little bit ago?
Pretty much. And now they're kind of blowing up a little bit.
All right.
But they're at least staying on topic.
All right, I've got another one here, which I thought was just interesting from the beginning of the week. CNN says Iran issues arrest warrant for Trump over drone strike that killed Qasem Soleimani. Bring it.
I think that's hilarious.
I think so too.
It's absolutely hilarious.
Reading from CNN, Iran has issued an arrest warrant for U.S. President Donald Trump over the drone strike that killed top Iranian general in January, the semi-official Fars news agency reported on Monday. I think semi-official is hilarious, but Trump is one of 36 people.
Semi-official.
Yeah. Trump is one of 36 people Iran has issued arrest warrants for in relation to the death of Qasem Soleimani, commander of the Islamic Revolution Guard Corps, according to Fars, but the Tehran Attorney General Ali Al-Qasi Mayer said Trump was at the top of the list. Mayer claimed Trump would be prosecuted as soon as he stands down presidency after his term ends, Fars reported. I'm going to say fact check false on that, because he is, for the most part, going to have Secret Service protection for the rest of his life. And I don't care how much the U.S. government hates him after he steps down, which seems to be a lot, but I don't think that they've got the balls to do an extradition like that on a former U.S. president.
No, I don't think they could even dream of trying.
I don't think they could even dream of working up the scrot to kind of do something like that.
No, I mean, an extradition is legal.
Yeah.
If you have to, an extradition is going through legal channels to get something like that done.
Yeah.
So I don't think anybody in the country hates Donald Trump that much to allow another country to basically take him from us.
Yeah.
And I just don't see it happening.
No, I don't either. But I mean, it's interesting that they're coming out and doing this. Their saber rattling is, for the most part, what they're doing. And I don't know where it ends. Well, of course I know where it ends, and
it peters out and doesn't go anywhere. Yeah. That's all that happens. And he'll probably honestly take it as a badge of honor.
I could see that.
Like, he really would.
I can totally see that, actually. I can see that happening.
I'm an internationally wanted man.
Iran said they were going to arrest me, but they couldn't do it because I'm the greatest president in the world.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
So this is saber rattling, and I just hope that it doesn't lead to war, but, that's always a possibility in this fucked up world that we're seeing here. All right, I got one more in 2020 watch here before we move on into the last couple topics we have, and we're going to power through on this. So let's get the magical picture up that I have of this one here. Kanye West issued a tweet on July 4th saying, "We must now realize the promise of America by trusting God, unifying our vision, and building our future. I am running for president of the United States. American flag, hashtag 2020 vision." And the left, especially on Instagram, blew the ever-loving fuck up.
Yeah, they did. Twitter did too.
I didn't see so much on Twitter, but I definitely going through Instagram stories left and right. They are pissed.
I thought people were excited about it. I've just seen a lot of positive from it. Mm-hmm. But it didn't take long for people to figure out, I think, what he's actually doing, which is giving Trump a boost.
See, I don't know about this, and to be completely honest, and I read the story this morning on this, he hasn't actually done anything as far as filing the paperwork, going with the FEC, or anything else that's involved with that.
The FEC's been closed down for COVID. They're not open yet.
Yeah.
So all their deadlines have been suspended.
All of their deadlines have been suspended, yes, but
that doesn't mean the state deadlines for ballot access have been suspended. But I'm saying the federal FEC filing can happen anytime.
Mm-hmm. And he is too late to get on the ballot in several of the key states, including his home state of California. He can no longer get on the ballot for. Mm-hmm. So,
right, yeah, I was watching this closely because a lot of people, that are big fans of Joe, were talking about it as well, and we kind of decided that we were going to number one, we were just going to take it with a grain of salt because it's Kanye. Mm-hmm. And number two, that if he is actually running for president, that we hope, based on the activities that his wife has engaged in the last few years with criminal justice reform and things like that, that third parties might have an ally in Kanye as far as debate inclusion and ballot access go.
Well, one of the things that I noted off of this, and just kind of looking back through Kanye's history, is the wordplay onto this. Because he never said he was running for president in 2020.
He hashtagged it 2020 vision, though.
Yeah, he did hashtag a 2020 vision, but he has talked in the past about running in 2024. So I don't know if he's actually making his official announcement for 2024 or if he is going to run in 2020. There's so much up in the air, and like we said, he's too late to get on the ballot.
It's only been 24 hours, so. Yeah.
And he is a little bit eclectic.
Eccentric is the word.
That too.
He also has a new album coming out soon. Mm-hmm. So this could be a promotional stunt.
Absolutely could, and like I said, it may be a thing to try and make left-wing heads explode because he seems to be doing very, very well on that. So there are all kinds of things at play in this. I mean, honestly, we've seen Donald Trump be president. How much worse could Kanye actually be? Plus, we've had a Bush and an Obama in the last decade. So how much worse can Kanye really be?
Okay, but let's imagine for a moment what a Kanye West cabinet would look like. Who would be his Secretary of State?
Probably Kim.
No, she can't. She's the First Lady.
Oh, that's true. I don't know.
She has a job. Like, who would Kanye choose to be his Secretary of State? Or his Secretary of Defense?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know where he is politically connected. I'm sure that he would actually try and get experts rather than just his boys.
Maybe he would appoint Elon as something.
Elon was very much in support of this.
He was super in support of it. Which is why I'm like, maybe he would appoint Elon to do something. That could be interesting.
It could be. So, I don't know where this goes. Like I said, I don't know if he's doing this for 2020, 2024, like you said, if he's just promoting an album. But it broke the internet for a day.
Maybe not a whole day, a few hours, but not a whole day. I don't
Oh,
think.
I woke up this morning and was looking at Instagram stories, and I was seeing an awful lot of pissed off leftists with the same post of "Do not vote for Kanye. He's just trying to divide the vote so Biden doesn't get in." A lot of people that are pissed off at Biden for the fact that they have to vote for him anyway.
Right.
So I don't know. You want to catch up with the chat for a little bit here while I get the sounders ready for the last couple segments?
Yeah, Ron's going to argue with me and say that the first lady is not an official job. It is an official
Is it an
job.
official job though?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of a figureheadish type of job, but you are in charge of planning state dinners and doing things like that.
What else do we got?
Comments about idiocracy.
Yeah, I saw the quotes of there, and my ex girlfriend liked to use that exact same line. Became a documentary way too soon.
Yeah.
But of course, we also have a faction of people right now that are using 1984 as an instruction manual rather than a warning. So there's plenty else on that.
Indeed.
What else?
All right, what do we got left?
Overreach of the week, staying at war of the week, and the surprise libertarian hatred. So if you want to catch everybody else back up on this, we will get ready. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
I actually made a sounder for this, so I'm excited to premiere that.
Okay.
Get ready. Just when you thought you were free, it's time for the government overreach of the week. All right, so you submitted this out of here, so you want to walk me through what's going on here? Just the article I see says new Republican bill, latest in long line to force encryption backdoors. So you want to walk me through what's going on with this one?
Yeah. So basically, if you are any kind of tech company in the United States, the government can and will force you to build backdoors into your software or your products so that at any time, in accordance with FISA or the Patriot Act or whatever the government decides to use, they can basically hack into your device, hack into an account or whatever, which is why a lot of these companies, even though they're billed as encrypted technology, they still have the backdoors still exist. So that's why a lot of tech companies are now being founded in places like Sweden or Switzerland, where they're not required to build in those backdoors. But I think that the government is putting the kibosh on people here being able to use that kind of software because they can't get into it. They have to know what you're doing. They're so desperate to know what you're doing that they're forcing tech companies to build backdoors into their stuff so that they don't need you to unlock your phone at the airport for them. They can just do it themselves. There's always a workaround. So that's it's pretty scary when you think about it.
Is that actually something that happens? Is having to
Yes.
unlock your phone at the airport? I've never had that happen. Ever.
Yeah, I know people that when they travel internationally and things like that, they delete their social media apps off their phone so that if they get pulled aside in customs or something like that, especially on return, that they'll unlock their phone if they have to, but then the person that's looking at it sees that there's no social media accounts on it. So then they just give it back to them.
That is crazy. I've only flown domestically, so I guess I wouldn't know about going internationally. But yeah, I've had other problems going through the airport, but it's never been my phone. That seems
Yeah,
like the last thing that
I've
they
never
want.
personally had issues with my phone either, but you never know.
And I know that this has been talked about for a long time, actually. I know, what was it, in 2016, they went after Apple and said, Apple, you must put this software on your phone, and Apple basically told them to bend over and take it. So Apple, for all their problems, has fought the good fight off of this, but I know Google has talked about having backdoors on various certain handsets of theirs, and I don't know why they need it to be a law, but of course it's the GOP that's running it too, so they were the
Right,
people that incepted the goddamn Patriot Act.
exactly.
I have a sticking point with the Patriot Act. I don't know if you can tell that or not.
I can tell, but every libertarian has a sticking point with the Patriot Act. If they don't, they're not a real libertarian.
So I don't know if this passes or not because at this point, the House Democrats are just as interested in being able to hack into your phone as everybody else is. They're just as interested in security and everything else. So this may be the point where we do need to try and talk about getting certain people in, like, what was his name? Brad Barron? Getting people like that in to try and shift the government because both parties are just as interested in surveillance as everybody else.
Yeah, the government in general is very interested in surveillance.
Yeah. I don't know when it happened, but it happened.
Right. They're not going to tell you when it happened.
All right. And then I've got another one that I made a sounder for here. And this is also a little bit of a problem that I have here. But let's get the sounder playing here. Because why would we ever want to leave the Middle East? Here is yet another reason to stay at war. So, we're staying at war at this point because the House panel votes to constrain Afghan drawdown asks for assessment on incentives to attack U.S. troops. This is reading from The Hill. The House Armed Services Committee voted Wednesday to put roadblocks on President Trump's ability to withdraw from Afghanistan, including requiring assessment on whether any country has offered incentives for the Taliban to attack the U.S. and coalition troops. The National Defense Authorization Act amendment from Representative Jason Crow would require several certifications before the U.S. military can further draw down in Afghanistan. The amendment was approved 45-11. And all I have to say to this, of course, is the fact that we're never getting the hell out of the Middle East, are we?
Probably not.
So, I don't know if you saw this article, read through this one or not, but what do you think the angle is for trying to keep us in the Middle East? Because, I mean, the people that were voting for this were the same people that were decrying the fact that we were going into Afghanistan when George Bush took us in there in 2002.
I think they just want to have a base of operations close to China and Russia. It's not as close to China, but it's very close to Russia. And I think that that's probably the selling point for why we should stay.
I know that before COVID, we were actually looking like, and this was something that actually may have changed my mind on the Patriot Act thing, that was looking like the fact that we were getting ready to get out. And then the coronavirus happened, and all of a sudden, nobody talked about the fact that we were in talks with drawing down out of Afghanistan. I was excited. I was legitimately excited.
Right. Yeah. It would have been really great because the risks that exist today for us bringing everyone home are the exact same risks that are going to exist in another 5 years, in another 10 years, and in another 30 years. So we're not gaining anything by staying. We're just spending more money. It's not going to get less risky as time goes on. If anything, it's going to be a law of diminishing returns thing, and we're suddenly not going to get anything out of it anymore, and more people are just going to die.
And I agree with that completely. I just... A lot of people don't even remember the fact that we were in talks with the Taliban to try and get out of Afghanistan, which, I mean, okay, I kind of wish we could have been talking to anybody else but the Taliban, but when they're the ones in charge, you got to take what you can get.
I mean, there are a lot of people that I know that are younger than me that don't remember a time when we weren't in Afghanistan. Because it's been that way their entire lives.
Yeah. People in the military just joining up right now only know that we've been fighting in the Middle East. Because the war is older than they are.
Their parents have been doing it.
Yeah.
They're children of people that went overseas when we first deployed in 2002 and 2003 now have kids old enough to deploy.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Now, I did speculate on this as well, that it's not just the matter of trying to keep a base of operations there. I do think that a part of this is trying to prevent the current sitting president from getting a win, because that was something that he did run on, was getting out of the Middle East. And he's done a, I don't want to say good job, I don't want to say great job, passable job of doing so. We have had drawdowns in several areas, and the military action that he has done, even though it's been decried at the time, actually did wind up being a net positive over there, except for the Afghanistan situation. I mean, they got several of the targets that they needed to. There's been shuffling of forces over, especially over on the Syrian border, which everybody called him an idiot for, but then wound up being a net positive for us because of what we were able to do and get the, not the Al Qaeda, what was the other one? The ISIS first and second in command right away off of that. There seemed to be a method to the madness there, and yeah, this was going to be another campaign promise fulfilled.
Except I don't think we were ever actually going to leave. He was going to remove troops, but I think what his intentions were to replace the troops with drones and things that were like unmanned aircraft and recon and stuff like that. So we're never going to not monitor that area. We're still going to put monetary resources into monitoring it. There's a lot of not allegorical. What am I thinking of? Alliteration. There's a lot of alliteration in that sentence. But you know what I mean? It's like, we're not going to actually ever spend any less money on that. They'll find higher tech things that cost a lot of money in place of soldiers to do things in the Middle East. We'll never stop spending money there. So it's not just about bringing the troops home. It's about bringing the troops home and then cutting the military budget. And that's never going to happen as long as we keep sending over equipment.
Yeah, and especially in the Middle East, because, that's what they keep on. Well, we want to see peace in the Middle East. There has not been peace in the Middle East since Abraham was walking around.
True.
They've been at each other's throats for 4,000 years. What are we going to do about it?
Nothing. There's nothing for us to do about it. They have been fighting for longer than we have been in existence as a society.
Christ, they've been fighting for longer than 3/4 of Europe has been in existence at this point.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I don't know where this ends here, but of course, and I don't know whose actual idea this was, or, well, I know whose idea it was, but what their actual intentions are. I'm not a mind reader, but it just seems like there's so much shady shit going on there, but all of it ends in us staying in Afghanistan forever.
Yes, absolutely.
I have got one more for you here, and as soon as I read this here, I'm going to open up the D-Live chest for our D-Livers, and you guys get ready to scramble for lemons out of here. And because of the delay in the chat here, you guys will get an extra little bit of chance to prepare for this here, but there is no headline on this article for whatever reason here. But out of Oshkosh Northwestern, I'll kind of paraphrase it for the headline, a police officer, the community has demanded that he step down because of posts that he made when he was 16 to 18 on a since deleted Twitter account and on his Instagram. This is out of my neck of the woods up here out of Wisconsin. So at a Grand Chute, about 50 people gathered on Sunday to demand police department fire an officer under investigation for racist, homophobic, and violent social media posts. The Grand Chute Police Department began an investigation last month after they were notified of Officer Brian Law Luzerne's tweets dating back to 2012, 2013, and 2014 that contained racial slurs, homophobic language, and murder threats. The Twitter account Law Luzerne posted the tweets to no longer exists. This is the part that I wanted to get your reaction on, so I'm actually going to be watching the screen out of here. Police said they are also investigating an Instagram post Law Luzerne made in October under the username LaluLeo738 that referenced the Boogaloo movement, which has known ties to white supremacy and radical libertarianism, and even included a picture of a handgun.
No. A handgun?
Radical libertarianism, that's the one that got me.
God.
So I will let you react on this, and I'm going to hit the D-Live chest for these guys, so let her rip.
I don't understand what this... Okay, so first of all, I've had to address this today because of some news that came out today, but that I can't talk about. But saying that the Boogaloo is in any way, shape, or form, one, organized, which they're not. Two, that they all have the same belief systems, whether they're located in Maine or New Mexico or Texas or Wyoming. It's all ridiculous because it's not a centrally organized organization. So they don't have an organizational structure. They don't have leaders. They don't have anything. They're even less organized than BLM is organized. Mm-hmm. So saying that there's known ties to white nationalism or white supremacy, where? In a county, maybe? In Virginia? Okay. That is hardly indicative of an entire movement as a whole. I think that's totally ridiculous.
Well, and the best thing that came out of this article, because I was, going through and looking at everything else that came out of this, was just a couple paragraphs down on this. According to the memo, Lau Luzerne was between the ages of 16 and 18 when he posted the tweets. He was 22 years old when he was hired by the department in 2017. He is now 24. So, yes, this is another instance of them going back and trying to cancel somebody over something that he said when he was a kid, essentially, when his prefrontal cortex wasn't completely developed, which, I mean, it still isn't, but...
Right.
Oops. I'm going to mute that for a second.
Facebook has started deleting Boogaloo groups and posts with references to Boog or Big Igloo or like all of that kind of language. Facebook is now starting to monitor that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous here. And I mean, Facebook, as much as they tried to bend down in front of the president and give him some sort of pleasure out of this so that they didn't get hit with the, I try to remain somewhat family friendly out of this. So he didn't get hit with Section 230.
Says the guy who said fuck earlier.
Yeah, that's true. I said somewhat. Give me... I mean, I don't understand Mark Zuckerberg at all. He's simultaneously He's simultaneously the most censorious and tries to be the least censorious at the same time, and I don't get it.
Sparta says, join my Big Glue group.
Oh, I like glue. I might be interested in that, actually. But I wanted your reaction off of that, so that's what I had out of that.
That was the surprise?
Yeah. Radical libertarianism. It's great.
Radical libertarian. I mean, it's radical for people who are statists, sure.
Yeah. Well, that's what I got for a show.
Awesome.
You want to catch us up on the live chat here?
Let me see here. There's a user called Redhead Lover 1776. I feel so appreciated.
Yes, I kind of knew that you were going to have a new fan. He's a recent convert from Twitch, where he was Unsatiable 1770. You've talked to this guy before in the live chat.
Oh, okay.
By a proxy. He was Unsatiable before.
Okay, I was going to say, this is the first time I've actually ran the live chat.
Yeah.
Talking about Afghanistan, because we're never actually done with Afghanistan. Sparta says you can add some lemons to the chest. Sparta was also kicked out of the Abolish the ATF group. That's unfortunate. What did you do?
Yeah, how do you get kicked out of something like that?
I don't know. Sully also calls the Boogalooers the boogers. Legit. That's all we got so far. Boogaloo will never happen until it does.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty much. Well, I mean, they never thought that the American Revolution was going to happen until it did.
Until it did. Yeah, exactly. Same with the Civil Rights Movement.
All right. Well, I think it's going to be time for us to head on out of here. Let's get the outro music going here, and we'll talk them up out of here. So, I do want to thank
Episode 1 in the books.
Yeah. I want to thank everybody who came out and chatted with us this week, and thanks for everyone who decided to support us and came over from the old show, and any new audience members that we had come in to join our newest co-host over here. So, and thanks Elaine for coming and helping out and making the show what it is, because God knows I desperately needed it here. If you are just catching up now and you want to catch us back on demand as soon as the video processes, we will be available on YouTube and over on BitChute.com. Go and check us out over there. Or, like I said in the beginning of the show, you can also check us out over on the audio platforms, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. And remember, if you're over on iTunes, leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That always helps us move up the charts. And lastly, if you want to catch up with us and all of the other great creators that we are associated with, and even check out some of our merch, you can go ahead and check us out over at freedomscoop.com. freedomscoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs, so go and check us out. You can find The Generational Gap, The Freckles and Brit Show, The Already Conservative, Wyatt Birkenhoff, and Stephen Ignoramus, along with our shows and Contemporary in the Morning, so come back and check us out as well. And lastly, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. You got anything you want to lead them out with?
No, it was great to be here with you guys. Episode 1's in the books, and we'll be here next week.
Take care, everyone.